Hi, this is Helen from Jupiter's Realm and welcome to another video. Now today I want to have a chat about Jupiter and astrology. Have you ever had a Jupiter transit and thought, why hasn't something better happened in my life? Or where's my financial windfall? Or why didn't I get that job promotion? Or I've just split up with my partner and that's not very fortunate. You might be expecting really great things from a Jupiter transit, and often that is the case, but sometimes some people might actually find the transit a bit of a flop. I see people getting really sort of disappointed by a Jupiter placement in a birth chart or a transit and being mystified or puzzled as to why they're not seeing something more positive happening, or they're expecting more coming their way in terms of wealth or opportunities or improvements in life. And I've experienced that myself. And I think part of this is because there can be some misconceptions about Jupiter and how it shows up in our life, and also over-expectations. Jupiter doesn't always bring what you expect, so I'm going to have a look at a few reasons why that could be to give you some food for thought about this, and some thoughts about how best to approach having a Jupiter transit or how to get the most out of it in terms of your birth chart placement. Jupiter is known as the Greater Benefic. The benefic planets, that's Jupiter and Venus, have that designation because they have what are considered life-affirming and improving qualities. Jupiter's principle is to improve, grow and create abundance and progress. It's associated with good luck, and the area of life and topics it represents can indicate where in life we can gain a sense of meaning, providence, or a feeling of being part of some greater pattern in existence. Jupiter represents fertility, growth, abundance and prosperity, generosity, wealth, justice, exuberance, relief from troubles and constraint, and good fortune with the freedom to move, grow or expand, either mentally, spiritually or physically, and to overcome hurdles, find solutions to difficulties. It's also associated with fellowship, cohesion, religion, gnosis, success, knowledge, authority, status and honours as well. Now every planet has a shadow side, so I should also mention that it represents excess, including such things as hubris, extravagance, and even recklessness sometimes. Some of the meaning of Jupiter comes partly from its association with the mystical god Zeus, and partly from the observational characteristics of the planet and its temperament. Zeus was king of the gods and known for being very prolific in offspring, and he'd often make his sexual conquests whilst in disguise. Jupiter in the sky is visible and bright, and was called Phaethon by the ancient astrologers, which means the shining one or the radiant one. Jupiter has a temperament of moderately hot and wet. Now these qualities are considered conducive to fertility. Think about how conditions of warmth and moisture help things grow in nature, for example. And moisture brings things together, it binds. Like when you add liquid to a cake mix, it binds the ingredients together. And we have an association with Jupiter of cohesion, unity and forming larger wholes. In the birth chart, the house Jupiter is in can indicate an area of life which you find more easeful to manage, or where you experience your most enjoyable or fruitful experiences. Now what that will be about exactly will be related to the topics of the house that Jupiter is in. Jupiter transits can correlate with a time where doors are opening for you in some way, where you have some good luck or feel a sense of relief or improvement about something that's been difficult or holding you back. However, the benevolence Jupiter brings isn't always obvious or what you'd expect. And that can be when it seems like there's nothing really good happening and that you're not gaining anything under the transit. There can be this misconception about Jupiter that it will always feel great and bring obvious benefits, but that's not always the case. And there are a few reasons why this might happen. For any transit, the biggest factor for how that transit is going to manifest or be experienced is the condition of the planet in the natal chart receiving that transit. So under a Jupiter transit, if the planet is in fair condition by sign, house and aspects, then you're more likely to experience a sense of positive growth, opportunities or improvements of some kind. If the planet has some technical challenges, for example difficult aspects, lack of dignity, then that planet is likely to already be expressing some dissatisfaction or frustrations in the life at some point. And then Jupiter, with its expanding, amplifying qualities, coming through by transit to that planet, it may indicate an amplification of those frustrations or a sense of messiness, and so it may not feel as positive as you'd expect. Think back also to the myth of Zeus that I mentioned, where Zeus is taken on disguises. We can see this as symbolic of a couple of things. That the fertilising principle of Jupiter is not always readily discernible, and that what's being planted in the life may not be what it appears to be. Jupiter can sow the seeds of inspirations, of ideas, of good fortune and opportunity, or for new paths and ventures. And just like when you sow a seed in the earth, you don't necessarily see anything happening straight away. It has to germinate. It takes time to sprout above the earth and be seen for what it is. So one way to think about Jupiter is that something is metaphorically being planted or fertilised during the time of a transit, but that you're not able to see that for some reason, and what was seeded may only become clear with hindsight. Or it may be that something has been planted but not immediately recognised for what it is, as something fortunate or life-affirming that can develop for us in an ultimately beneficial way. Something else to think about is that whilst Jupiter can indicate good fortune and opportunities, etc., by transit or in the birth chart, it might not be appreciated as such. For example, let's say you have Jupiter in good condition in the 11th house in a day-sect chart. One of the ways this could show up in the life is having, on the whole, positive experiences around friends and social groups or organisations, and for it to be a relatively fulfilling area of life. But if that's always been your experience and you haven't known anything else, then it's easy to take that for granted and to fall into the trap of thinking that's a norm for other people too. And so it might not stand out in your mind as something very special. But then if you step back from that and have a look at it objectively and really see how other people are experiencing that area of life, you may find out that not everyone is having on the whole positive experiences or finding fulfilment in their social circles. Some people struggle to find fulfilling connections, or they might feel really isolated. And so having great experiences regarding friends is something that's quite special, and that in the grand scheme of things, this is really a very fortunate manifestation of that Jupiter. So our own perspectives and our own ability to have a bigger picture view can colour our recognition of Jupiter blessings in our life. Something else to consider about how we experience Jupiter is that we need to be open to, rather than specific in our expectations, about the possibilities of what Jupiter can indicate in accordance with its archetype. Now, this may depend upon the sort of cultural and social context. For example, we may believe that Jupiter blessings should be about having a certain kind of job, a certain type or size of home, or being married to someone who holds a certain type of status, or more of something in general. But of course, more of something in life isn't necessarily what's best for our personal growth and our life path. So maybe you're looking for specific types of good fortune, outcomes or increase. But whilst Jupiter is the principle of growth and abundance, I think it's helpful to be open to different ways that might show up for you, remembering how Zeus in myth appeared in different forms. So rather than having fixed expectations, I think it's more helpful to be ready to embrace different possibilities. And if we are over-expecting or over-idealising what we think Jupiter should bring, or equally not valuing something as a blessing or opportunity, then of course we can overlook it, and it may well seem like nothing's happening. And if some good fortune or opportunities are received, I think they need to be tended to and watered, just like you would do to a plant, to nurture it and care for it if you want it to continue to grow and be healthy. There can be this idea that Jupiter is going to bring a solution to all our troubles. It's going to be a big win in an area of life. But what Jupiter brings may be something that seems relatively mundane or insignificant in reality at the time. Let's say, for example, you have Jupiter going through your 8th house of taxes, insurance, debt and shared resources. And maybe there's an opportunity, financially or otherwise, to take out a certain kind of insurance that normally wouldn't be available to you or you normally wouldn't be aware of. Now, to some people, depending on their circumstances and context, that might seem like a really run-of-the-mill, everyday thing, not really outstanding, and so it may not seem like a great Jupiter blessing. It's not like an improvement regarding the topics of finances necessarily. But then later you realise how much of a godsend taking out that insurance was. So Jupiter transits can be seemingly insignificant opportunities or gifts, rather than some great obvious change or abundance that you expect. Jupiter has a protective quality too, in the sense that it might not bring obvious abundance per se to an area of life, but it may instead mitigate a problem or indicate the avoidance of something which could have been more problematic otherwise, and so it may feel like providence. You may get some seemingly good luck coming through. So for example, let's say you have a car accident under a Jupiter transit. Jupiter isn't associated with accidents, but instead it can indicate a saving grace, so that the accident ends up not being as problematic as it could have been. It could be a near miss, for example, although you have the resources to deal with whatever occurs, like the finances for the car repair, or finances to get a new one, or access to good healthcare to make a good recovery if there's been some kind of physical injury, the support of really great doctors, or family support, or just some factor in the environment that at that time is really helping out to make that situation a lot easier or manageable. Another factor I want to mention is that Jupiter doesn't totally negate challenges in life. It can indicate greater ease for sure, which is great and not to be sneezed at, but don't expect it to mean that that part of life is all smooth sailing. No, I don't want to make this sound like I'm bringing Jupiter down, not at all. Jupiter can really indicate some helpful and fruitful things. But I think with a lot of pop astrology out there and stuff that's on social media, there can be this overhype about Jupiter in the sense that it creates an over-expectation about Jupiter transits or how Jupiter might manifest with regards to the birth chart. I'm not saying that Jupiter transits or placements in the chart aren't good, but it's more complex than is sometimes presented. Yes, it can indicate ease and flow and good fortune, and the ability to grow and have opportunities that enhance our life and our personal growth, and that give us a sense of meaning or purpose. But they may come in ways you don't expect or might not be obvious. And sometimes it can even entail feeling some challenges before being able to see the benefits. Sometimes that can be through a releasing principle, creating freedom or release in a way that we might not desire. And yet whilst that can be challenging, ultimately it becomes a turning point for greater personal liberation or growth in the long run. Jupiter doesn't tend to indicate the kind of challenges, blockages, negation or sense of burden that sometimes Saturn or Mars can. But for example, an opportunity could arise to do something that could bring a greater sense of meaning or freedom or well-being. But if you're afraid to take that step, or are resistant to change, or just don't value the opportunity for what it is and don't take it, then, you may miss that opportunity. A Jupiter transit can't make you take an opportunity, and it can't make you walk through a door that's been opened. Something else to remember is that not everyone will experience a Jupiter transit or what Jupiter indicates in a birth chart in the same way. Jupiter's core principles and significations still remain, but other factors will modify the expression or experience of those. For example, in the natal chart, factors like the sector of the chart, Jupiter's dignity, aspects or house placement, and of course our own reactions and choices to what occurs play some part. Two people might experience a Jupiter transit to the same planet in the birth chart differently because of the context of the birth chart. So whilst we can talk in general ways about what Jupiter means in terms of its significations, or in terms of what Jupiter's doing in the sky in terms of the astro weather generally, but on a personal level, the expression or experience of that isn't so black and white. Of course, there's nothing wrong with wishing for or hoping for good things in life, and it can be really useful to be aware of when you have a significant Jupiter transit to your birth chart, so that you can be aware and ready to embrace any opportunities or inspiration that arises. I think probably the best way to approach Jupiter is not to have any specific expectations, and to hold an open mind and an open heart to the possibility of something arising other than perhaps what you can imagine or expect. Or those seeds being planted, as I've talked about, perhaps of a new vision for the future, a chance for growth or healing, or chance opportunities or encounters that turn out to be meaningful in the long run. So do make the most of Jupiter transits to your chart or your Jupiter placement in your birth chart. There can be a lot of positive and beneficial indications from Jupiter that can help us with our personal growth and our aspirations, and gaining a sense of meaning and purpose in the relevant areas of life. So I hope you've found this helpful and this has provided some food for thought for you. If you've had a Jupiter experience that wasn't what you expected, or if you have any thoughts or comments about this, then please do leave them below. I would love to hear from you. Till next time then, bye for now.